Millionaire marries and black woman on a bet. 20 minutes discovers, later completely shocks him. In this captivating video, we delve into an extraordinary story that unfolds with unexpected twists and turns. A millionaire, driven by a reckless bet, finds himself marrying a black woman, a decision he initially undertakes without much thought. However, what happens just 20 minutes after the wedding ceremony leaves him utterly shocked and transforms his life in ways he never imagined. We'd love to hear if you're excited about this story. If you had a good time watching the video, go ahead and press 1. If that's not the case, just press 0. Your feedback truly motivates me to collect more heartwarming and significant stories.
Lucas Marshall was a wealthy and arrogant man who agreed to a bet that would change his life in ways he never expected. He was used to winning in business and life, and competition was what fueled him. But when his close friend Jack made a bold challenge at a lavish New York party, Lucas found himself intrigued. Jack smirked and threw out the challenge. "Let's see if you can win this one." "Lucas, I bet you wouldn't have the guts to marry a woman who doesn't fit your usual type." Lucas, known for dating beautiful women, was taken aback. However, always eager to prove himself, he raised an eyebrow and asked, "And what's the prize?" Jack grinned mischievously and raised his champagne glass. $1 million to the winner," he said. "But you have to marry her and stay married for at least 6 months." Lucas, feeling the rush of competition and the allure of a financial reward, agreed without hesitation. The woman Jack had in mind was Chloe Richards, someone who didn't fit conventional beauty standards. Lucas didn't know her, but to him, it was just another deal to win. Days later, Lucas received more details about Chloe. She was confident, independent, and strong-willed, nothing like the women Lucas was used to. This intrigued him even more. Used to being in control, he wondered how he would handle someone who wouldn't bend to his will. Their first meeting took place at a luxurious restaurant. When Chloe arrived, Lucas immediately noticed how different she was from anyone he had ever met. She didn't seem intimidated by the fancy setting or by Lucas himself. Instead, she met his gaze with firm confidence. "You must be Lucas Marshall," Chloe said directly as she sat down. "And you must be Chloe Richards," Lucas replied, extending his hand with a controlled smile. She hesitated briefly before shaking it with a strong grip, showing her determination. "Let's not beat around the bush," Chloe began, her tone straightforward. "I know why we're here. I know about the bet, the terms, and the conditions." Lucas was surprised by her bluntness, but didn't show it. "And yet you still agreed to meet?" he asked, curious about her motivations. Chloe paused for a moment before answering. "Let's just say I have my reasons. I'm not naive. 6 months may seem short, but a lot can change in that time. If you think you can manipulate or control me, you're mistaken." Lucas smiled. Chloe was proving to be more of a challenge than he had anticipated, which only made things more interesting for him. As their first meeting ended, Lucas found himself increasingly intrigued by Chloe. She wasn't like anyone he had met before. She wasn't afraid of him, and that piqued his curiosity and even admiration. Days passed, and Lucas couldn't stop thinking about how to approach the next step. He was used to being the master of the game, but now it seemed Chloe had her own moves. Their second meeting took place at a simple cafe, a far cry from the glamorous restaurants Lucas usually frequented. Chloe had suggested the spot, and Lucas, curious, agreed. He wanted to understand who she was and why she had agreed to what seemed like a temporary contract of marriage. When Lucas arrived, Chloe was already there, sipping tea with a calm smile. She greeted him warmly, but without the coldness of their first encounter, still carrying herself with that same unshakable confidence. "I thought you preferred 5-star restaurants," Chloe teased as Lucas sat down. "Sometimes it's good to break the routine," Lucas replied, trying to sound casual, though he felt slightly out of his element. They chatted for a while, exchanging surface-level details. But Chloe quickly got to the point. "If we're really going through with this, I want to make a few things clear," Chloe said, placing her cup of tea on the table. "I'm not interested in your money or your luxury lifestyle. 6 months is 6 months, and I plan on walking away from this exactly the same as I entered. Lucas watched her carefully. He knew she was being honest. Chloe was the type of woman who knew what she wanted. And clearly, marriage wasn't something she saw as a way to climb the social ladder, like many others might. "So, what do you want?" Lucas asked, genuinely curious. "Freedom," she answered without hesitation. "I want you to know that even though we're entering into this agreement, I won't be controlled by you. I have my own life, and that's not going to change because of a temporary marriage." Lucas smiled. It wasn't the answer he expected, but at the same time, he didn't mind granting Chloe this freedom. To him, marriage was just a formality to win the bet. If she wanted to keep her independence, it wouldn't bother him. "Fine," Lucas agreed. 6 months after that, we go our separate ways. Chloe watched him for a moment, as if wanted to be sure he really agreed to the terms. She had accepted this challenge with a plan in mind and was determined to ensure everything went according to her wishes. Deep down, she knew Lucas might try to manipulate the situation, but she also trusted her own strength to resist his influence. The meeting ended on friendly terms, with both leaving with their roles clearly defined. Chloe would keep her independence, and Lucas would ensure that the marriage was nothing more than a formality. But as the days passed and the wedding date approached, Lucas couldn't help but feel that maybe this game wasn't as simple as he had imagined. The wedding took place in a cold, unceremonious manner, like a carefully orchestrated business contract. Lucas Marshall, with his strategic mindset, already saw himself as the winner of the bet. He was certain that the 6 months would fly by, and that Chloe, no matter how stubborn, would eventually give in to the luxurious lifestyle he was about to offer her. Right after the ceremony, Lucas took Chloe to his massive penthouse in the heart of New York, a monument to his wealth. The huge glass windows reflected the city lights, and the interior was filled with the most expensive and exclusive decor. To him, this was the real battleground where he would win Chloe over through the power of his material world. But from the very first moment, Chloe made it clear she wasn't going to back down. As soon as she stepped into the penthouse, she maintained a distant demeanor. The look she gave Lucas wasn't one of admiration, but of defiance. 6 months, Lucas. Not a day more, she said firmly, walking over to one of the large windows and looking at the city without being impressed by the luxury around her. Lucas smiled, confident. He was used to this kind of resistance in the beginning. Every woman who had been in his life eventually bent to his charm and wealth. Chloe wouldn't be any different, or so he thought. In the first few days after the wedding, Lucas tried everything to impress her. He showered her with expensive jewelry, designer clothes, and luxurious trips, all with the expectation that Chloe would start to adapt to the lifestyle he dictated. But to his frustration, she refused it all. Chloe insisted on sticking to her simple, modest routine, never giving in to the trappings of wealth. "I don't need these things, Lucas," she would say with a calmness that only made him more irritated. It deeply bothered him. Lucas, who always got everything he wanted, was seeing his authority challenged for the first time. It wasn't just about the bet anymore. Now, it was personal. He had to win Chloe over somehow. He needed to prove that. In the end, he was the one in control. That's when he started playing more aggressively. He stopped her from going to work, offering reasons like, "You don't need a paycheck anymore," or "Your role as my wife." When Chloe insisted, he made her wait for hours for meetings she thought were important. Lucas manipulated schedules, situations, everything to maintain control. But Chloe didn't give in. She was a solid rock against Lucas's attempts, and that only intensified his desire to break her. Their relationship began to turn into a minefield. Small provocations surfaced in trivial conversations, where Chloe, with sharp words, diffused every attempt Lucas made to make her feel inferior or controlled. On one particularly tense night, Lucas tried a more emotional approach. "I don't understand you, Chloe," he said, staring at her with a mix of frustration and curiosity. "Any other woman would be happy to live this kind of luxury, but you act like it's not enough. What do you really want?" Chloe, who had been impassive until that moment, finally lifted her eyes, and they gleamed with an intensity Lucas hadn't expected. What do I want? I want respect. Lucas, I'm not a piece on your chessboard. You think you can control me with money. But you're wrong. Money doesn't buy dignity or integrity. You might have all these things around you, but you're empty inside. And that's what you can't stand. Her words hit him like a punch to the gut. For the first time, Lucas felt that he might be losing more than just control. Chloe wasn't just resisting his power. She was dismantling the facade he had built over the years. And that scared him. No one had ever challenged him like this. And the fact that Chloe saw beyond his wealth made Lucas feel exposed. But instead of backing off, Lucas decided to tighten his grip. He started making plans to isolate Chloe, to make her realize that without him, her life would be much harder. He cut off contacts, closed doors that could advance her career, and even sabotaged important events she was organizing. However, Chloe wasn't the type to be easily intimidated. With every blow, she stood back up, more determined than before. She held on to her dignity, refusing to be shaped by Lucas. And then, one night, Chloe played her own card. Lucas, you think you're in control, don't you? She said, calculatedly. But what you don't know is that I have a plan too. And believe me, when the time is right, you'll see that this whole game is built on something much bigger than you ever imagined. Lucas stared at her, surprised. For the first time, he realized he might have underestimated Chloe. And for the first time, he felt fear that in the end, he might not be the winner of this game. The weeks went by like a tightly stretched rope, growing tenser each day, ready to snap. Lucas, in his obsession with control, tried every way to manipulate the situation to his advantage. But Chloe kept resisting without flinching. She was like a fortress he couldn't tear down. Every attempt he made only seemed to reinforce her inner strength. But there was something Lucas couldn't deny. As time went on, he started to see Chloe differently. It wasn't just about respecting her resilience. It was something deeper. She was doing something no other woman had ever done. She was disarming him emotionally. And that made him feel uneasy, confused. For the first time, he found himself thinking of her not as part of a bet or an opponent, but as a person he genuinely wanted to understand. One night, after a heated argument, Lucas found himself alone in the large living room, staring out at the city through the glass windows. The glow of the city lights used to give him a sense of power. But now everything felt empty. He wondered why he was feeling this way. Chloe was just a woman he'd married for 6 months. She should have been just a piece in his game. Nothing more. But the truth was, she was stirring something inside him. He, who always controlled his emotions, was now being affected. Chloe could see through his facade, and that made him feel vulnerable. As Lucas wrestled with his thoughts, Chloe carried on with her routine. She seemed more distant each day, almost as if she were waiting for something. Lucas felt like there was an invisible wall between them, something he couldn't break through, and it tormented him. He didn't know if it was pride or the fear of losing control. But something about Chloe drew him in a way he never imagined possible. "You're different," Lucas said one evening to Jack, his friend who had proposed the bet, during a casual dinner. "Normally, you'd have everything under control by now. But it seems like this woman is challenging you in a way no one else has." Lucas gave a forced smile, unable to respond right away. He hated to admit that Jack was right, but it was clear that something was changing. That night, Lucas came home determined to settle things. He needed to get Chloe out of his head, needed to remind himself that this was just a contract, nothing more. When he walked into the penthouse, he found Chloe on the couch, reading a book, completely unaware of his presence. "Can we talk?" Lucas asked, breaking the silence that had become the norm between them. Chloe looked up, calmly closed her book, and gazed at him with a serene but attentive expression. "Of course," she replied, as if she'd been waiting for this moment. Lucas sat across from her, trying to find the right words. The tension between them was palpable. He knew he couldn't treat this marriage like a simple formality anymore. Something was changing, and he had to face it head on. "What are we doing here, Chloe?" he asked, with a sincerity that even surprised him. "This started as a game, a bet, but I don't know what to think anymore." Chloe stared at him for a few seconds before responding. "I'm not playing." "Lucas, I never was. Her voice was calm, but full of meaning. From the beginning, I accepted this marriage for reasons that go beyond you. I don't care about the money or your control over things. I'm here for something bigger. And if you haven't realized that by now, maybe it's time to open your eyes. Lucas felt a tightness in his chest. It was as if she were revealing a secret he still couldn't figure out. Frustration consumed him. I know you have your secrets, Chloe, but what irritates me is the more I try to understand you, the more I realize I'm not in control. And I hate that. He suddenly stood up, unable to stay still, as if the weight of that revelation was too much to bear. Chloe remained calm, watching his every move. She slowly got up and walked toward him, stopping just a few inches away. Lucas, she began, her voice low and soft. This isn't about control. You've always lived trying to dominate everything and everyone. But with me, you'll have to learn that control isn't always the answer. Sometimes things just need to be what they are. Lucas looked into her eyes, and for a moment, he felt a connection he'd never felt before. It was like, for the first time, he was truly seeing Chloe for who she was, not as a piece in his game. So, what do you want? He asked, his voice softer now, almost a whisper. Chloe smiled, a mysterious smile that gave him chills. I want you to figure that out for yourself, Lucas. With that, she walked away, leaving him there alone with his thoughts. In the following days, the distance between them seemed to grow, but in a strange way, Lucas began to feel closer to Chloe than ever before. He was obsessed with figuring out what she was hiding, what her true intentions were, and at the same time, he felt like he was losing control of himself. He didn't want to admit it, but Chloe was changing the way he saw the world, and the very idea that she could be affecting him so deeply terrified him. The 6 months of marriage were almost over, but for Lucas Marshall, each day felt like an eternity. He could hardly sleep. The looming revelation, he felt, was on the verge of discovery, and it made his stomach turn. Chloe had become an enigmatic presence in his life. He thought of her not just as the woman he married on a bet, but as someone who knew something he couldn't grasp. The obsession to understand Chloe consumed him. He had tried everything to uncover the secret she carried, but each answer only led to more questions. Lucas hired detectives, dug into her past, and followed every lead he could, but everything seemed carefully orchestrated by Chloe. It was as if she was always 2 steps ahead, controlling the game from the very beginning. One night, after a business meeting, Lucas arrived at the penthouse later than usual. The balcony light was on, and there was Chloe, sitting, looking out over New York like a queen overseeing her empire. He knew that tonight was when everything would be revealed. Lucas felt she was ready to tell him what he had been so desperate to know, but the fear of what he might hear made his throat tighten. He walked toward her, the sound of his footsteps echoing in the quiet room. Chloe didn't turn around right away. The air was heavy, almost as if both knew something devastating was about to unfold. I need answers, Chloe, Lucas said, his voice firm, though his heart raced. I can't take this game anymore. You have to tell me the truth. Chloe sighed slowly and rose from her chair, turning to face him. Her eyes, usually calm and calculating, now shone with an emotion Lucas couldn't decipher. There was something new in her, something dark and fierce. The truth. Lucas, she gave a bitter smile, crossing her arms. Do you really want the truth? He nodded without hesitation, but the tension in the air grew with each passing second. Lucas braced himself for any answer, but nothing could have prepared him for what he was about to hear. You have no idea who I am, Chloe began, her voice carrying a chill. You've always seen people as pawns on your chessboard, but this time, Lucas, you were the pawn. I've been playing this game from the start. Lucas felt a shiver run down his spine. The certainty he always had about being in control was beginning to crumble in front of her. He tried to speak, but Chloe didn't let him. Do you remember the name Richards? She continued, her voice growing sharper. Of course. You don't. People like you never remember. My father owned a small company, one that struggled to survive until you came along and destroyed it. Lucas stepped back, his mind racing. trying to connect the dots. What? What are you talking about? He stammered. Confused. Chloe took a step toward him, her eyes burning with anger and pain. My father, Lucas. He was an honest man, struggling to support our family. Until you came along and took everything. You ruined him. Lucas. He lost everything, and it led to his death. Chloe paused, her voice breaking for a moment, tears welling up in her eyes. My father killed himself because of your empire, your success at any cost. The impact of her words hit Lucas like a punch to the gut. He stood there, frozen, as memories slowly resurfaced. There had been so many deals, so many contracts, so many lives affected by his greedy hands. He couldn't remember every company he crushed to rise to the top. But now, suddenly, it was all coming back to haunt him. Chloe, he tried to interrupt, desperate, but she raised her hand, stopping him. No, she shouted, her anger boiling over. You have no idea what you caused. It's not just about money. Lucas, it's about destroyed lives. You took my father from me, the only person I had in the world. And while you thrived, my mother and I sank into debt and despair. You lived your life in luxury, and we barely had anything to eat. Lucas was completely stunned. He wanted to speak, to defend himself, but no words came out. All he could do was stand there, staring at her, as the weight of guilt pressed down on his chest. But Chloe didn't stop there. I planned everything, she continued, her tone now more controlled, but still filled with resentment. When I learned about your bet, I saw my chance. I approached you on purpose. I accepted the bet because I wanted you to feel just a fraction of what I felt. I wanted you to know what it's like to be played, manipulated, and left powerless. Lucas felt his body tremble. He had always thought he was in control, always believed he would come out victorious. But now, the tables had turned. He was the target, and Chloe, the player, was controlling the entire board. Chloe. Lucas began to speak, but his voice was weak. I didn't know, he whispered. I didn't know. Lucas whispered, his voice weak, desperate for a chance to explain. But Chloe didn't let him speak. No, you didn't know, she interrupted, stepping closer until she was face to face with him. You never knew because you never cared. You destroyed lives. Lucas. And you didn't even look at the people in your way. I lost my father, and you went on with your life as if nothing had happened. Her words cut into him, each one a sharp reminder of the consequences of his actions. He wanted to apologize, to say something that would make it right. But deep down, he knew there was nothing that could erase the pain he had caused. Not this time. I never could have imagined. Lucas stammered, trying to find the words, but they felt hollow. He looked in her eyes, searching for a glimmer of forgiveness. But all he saw was the anger that had been building for years. I'm so sorry, Chloe. I never knew the damage I caused. I didn't know how far my actions had gone, how much they hurt you. Chloe stood still, tears streaming down her face. Sorry doesn't bring him back. Lucas, it won't fix the years of pain you caused my family. You can't erase the fact that my father is gone, that I had to watch my mother struggle. You've lived in luxury while I've been drowning in the consequences of your greed. Lucas sank to his knees, overwhelmed by the weight of her words. The world he had built, his success, his wealth seemed meaningless now. Everything he thought he was, everything he had worked for, had been built on the destruction of others. And now, it was all crashing down on him. I'll do anything, Lucas begged, his voice cracking. Please, Chloe. I'll do anything to make it right, to fix what I've broken. Chloe looked down at him, her expression cold and distant. You can't fix what's already been broken. Lucas, you can't undo the years of torment, and you can't make up for the life that was stolen from me and my mother. There was a long silence between them, both of them standing in the emotional wreckage of their past. Chloe had finally revealed everything. The truth that Lucas had been blind to for so long. It hit him harder than anything ever could, the reality of his actions. The damage he had done to someone who had only wanted justice. You're not going to fix this with money or power. Chloe continued, her voice steadier now. I don't want your apologies or your money. I wanted you to feel the same helplessness, the same powerlessness that my family felt when you ruined us. And you will. Lucas, you'll feel it every day for the rest of your life. Lucas felt the ground beneath him give way. Everything he had been, everything he had controlled, was now slipping through his fingers. He had always prided himself on being the one in charge, the one who called the shots. But now, standing there before Chloe, he realized that he had been nothing but a puppet in her hands. Chloe stepped back, her gaze still locked onto him, but with no sign of mercy in her eyes. You'll carry this guilt with you forever, Lucas, and that's the only payment I'll ever get. With that, she turned and walked out of the room, leaving Lucas alone in the emptiness of his own guilt. The penthouse, once a symbol of his success, now felt cold and hollow. He looked around at the luxury surrounding him, but it all seemed meaningless now. He had everything and yet nothing. In the days that followed, Chloe ignored him completely. She no longer looked at him, no longer spoke to him. Her presence in the penthouse was a constant reminder of what he had done, and the silence between them was a punishment worse than any words could ever be. Lucas tried to reach out, to explain himself, but Chloe didn't respond. She didn't need to. He was left alone to grapple with the truth of his actions. The emptiness he felt inside was more suffocating than any wealth or power he had ever accumulated. He had destroyed lives, and now there was no way to undo it. One morning, after another fruitless attempt to talk to Chloe, Lucas stood at the window, staring out at the city. The view that had once filled him with pride now seemed like a prison. He had everything he wanted, but it was all built on the misery of others. Chloe had shown him the truth. He was the one who had been played, the one who had been manipulated all along. I can't fix the past, he muttered to himself, his voice barely above a whisper. But I can try to make things right, one step at a time. That day, Lucas began his journey of redemption. It wasn't about earning Chloe's forgiveness. It was about proving to himself that he could change, that he could make amends for the lives he had ruined. He started by donating money to the families whose businesses he had destroyed, meeting with people he had wronged, offering them whatever he could to help rebuild what he had taken from them. But Chloe was watching from a distance, her eyes still guarded, her heart still broken. She didn't trust him. Not yet, and maybe she never would. But Lucas was determined to show her that he was serious about changing. He wasn't doing this for her forgiveness. He was doing it for himself, to make up for the pain he had caused. Months went by, and Lucas kept his promises. He showed up at the doorsteps of the people he had wronged, offering more than just money. He gave them his time, his effort, his commitment to make things right. Slowly, Chloe began to notice the changes. She could see that he wasn't just making empty promises anymore. He was working hard to repair the damage he had done. But even as she saw the effort, she still held back. The pain was too fresh. It would take time. One evening, as Lucas was returning from yet another visit to a family he had wronged, he found Chloe standing on the balcony, looking out over the city. For the first time in months, there was no wall between them, no anger or resentment in her eyes. He walked over to her, cautiously, not wanting to push her. "I've been working on it," he said quietly, his voice soft. "I know it's not enough, but I'm trying to make things right. I know I can't change the past, but I want to show you that I'm not the man I used to be." Chloe turned to him, her gaze steady. She didn't say anything for a moment, just looked at him. Then, finally, she spoke, her voice softer than he had ever heard it. "I see the changes, Lucas, but it's not just about what you're doing now. It's about what you've done, and that's going to take time to heal." Lucas nodded, his heart heavy. He knew it wouldn't be easy. He knew it wouldn't be quick. But for the first time in his life, he was ready to face the consequences of his actions. He was ready to work, to prove that he had changed, not for Chloe, but for himself. And maybe, just maybe, in time, Chloe would see that too. The days that followed were a delicate balance between progress and setbacks. Chloe remained distant, but her attitude had softened. She no longer treated Lucas with open disdain, but she still kept him at arm's length. There were moments of connection, small gestures like making her favorite coffee or buying her flowers, and even conversations that lasted longer than usual. But the walls Chloe had built were still there. And Lucas knew that breaking them down would take more than just time. It would take proving that he was truly different. Lucas was determined, more than ever, to show Chloe that he was no longer the man he had been when they first met. He canceled meetings, rearranged his schedule, and spent more time at home. He did everything he could think of to prove that he had changed. But it seemed that no matter how hard he tried, Chloe remained wary. She accepted his gestures, but she didn't fully embrace them. She was waiting, and Lucas knew that. One evening, as the 6-month mark of their marriage approached, Lucas found himself sitting across from Chloe in their living room. The tension between them was palpable. It was as if they both knew the end was near, 6 months of the marriage contract, and then they would go their separate ways. But Lucas didn't want it to end that way. He wanted something real, something deeper than a bet. He had fallen in love with Chloe, not out of a game, but out of respect for the person she was. Chloe, Lucas began, his voice trembling with uncertainty. I know we made a deal when we got married, but I don't want this to end. I don't want us to go our separate ways. I've fallen in love with you, Chloe, and I want us to continue this time, for real. No bets, no games, just us. Chloe looked at him, her expression unreadable. She was quiet for a long moment, and Lucas felt his heart pounding in his chest, unsure of what to expect. He had been through so much, he had changed. He had worked hard to earn her trust, but it seemed like it was all still fragile. I know I hurt you, Lucas continued, his voice softer now, almost pleading, and I know that I can't undo the damage I've done, but I want to build something real with you. I don't want this to be a transaction anymore. I want you to know that I've changed, and I want to prove it to you. I want to be the man you deserve. Chloe sat in silence, and for a moment, Lucas feared she might reject him. But then, she spoke, her voice low and thoughtful. Lucas, I've watched you change, she said slowly, her eyes searching his face. And I won't lie to you. It hasn't been easy for me. I've been hurt, and it's hard to let go of that pain. But I also see that you're trying. You've done more than just apologize. You're showing me that you want to be better. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough to start something new. But it won't be easy. It's going to take time. Lucas, it's going to take more than just words. Lucas nodded, understanding. He didn't expect forgiveness to come easily, nor did he expect it to come quickly. But hearing her say those words, seeing that there was still a chance for them, was all he needed. He wasn't giving up. Not now. Not ever. Thank you, Lucas whispered, his voice filled with emotion. I'll do whatever it takes. I promise you. I'll be here, every step of the way. In the weeks that followed, their relationship began to shift again, this time towards something more genuine. Chloe allowed him to get closer, but on her terms. She still kept some distance, but the walls were slowly coming down. Lucas didn't rush her. He knew it would take time for her to fully trust him again, and he was willing to wait. Their days became filled with small moments of connection, talking over dinner, sharing their thoughts, and even laughing together. Chloe began to let him into her world, showing him a side of her that had remained hidden for so long. Lucas wasn't just a man who had been part of her plan for revenge anymore. He was someone she was starting to see in a new light. One evening, as they sat on the balcony of their penthouse, watching the city lights twinkle below them, Chloe turned to him with a soft smile. You know, she said, her voice calm and thoughtful, when I first agreed to this marriage, I thought it would be a way for me to get back at you. I thought it would be my chance to make you feel what I had felt. But somewhere along the way, I started to see you differently. I started to see that you were trying to change. Not for me, but for yourself. Lucas looked at her, his heart swelling with emotion. He had always been driven by the need to win, to be in control. But now, he realized that the true victory was in the change he had made within himself. He didn't need to win Chloe over anymore. He just needed to prove to her, and to himself, that he could be the man she deserved. I'm not perfect, Lucas said softly, his voice steady. But I'm trying, Chloe. And I will keep trying. I want to build something real with you. I don't care about the bet anymore. I don't care about winning or losing. I just care about you. Chloe didn't respond right away, but the look in her eyes told Lucas everything he needed to know. There was a quiet understanding between them, a sense that they were beginning to move forward, no longer as strangers or adversaries, but as two people who had found a way to start again. And for the first time since they had gotten married, Lucas felt a sense of peace. The bet, the challenge, the games, it all seemed so distant now. All that mattered was the future, the possibility of building something new, something real. With Chloe, as the months passed, Lucas continued to prove himself to her. He didn't just apologize, he took action. Not just with words, but with every gesture he made. He worked on his business practices, making things right with the people he had hurt, and showing Chloe that he was serious about the man he had become. It wasn't easy. There were moments when doubts crept in, when both of them wondered if they were truly ready to move forward. But every day, Lucas tried harder, not just to earn Chloe's forgiveness, but to earn her trust, her respect, and maybe, in time, her love. Then, one day, as they were sitting together, Chloe looked at him, her eyes filled with emotion. "Lucas," she began, her voice steady but soft. I'm ready. I'm ready to build something with you. It's not perfect, and it won't be easy, but I think we've both changed, and that's enough to start." Lucas smiled, feeling the weight of the past lift from his shoulders. He had done it. He had won, not through wealth or power, but through change, growth, and love. And with that, they began their new life together, not as a couple tied together by a bet, but as two people who had learned to trust and respect each other. Their future was uncertain, but they were ready to face it together, hand in hand, knowing that no matter what came their way, they would face it as equals. As time passed, Lucas and Chloe began to build a life that neither of them had expected. The road was far from smooth, and the weight of their past still lingered. But there was something undeniable between them now, a connection that wasn't born from a bet or a game, but from real change and mutual respect. Chloe started to open up more. She shared parts of her past with Lucas that she had kept hidden for so long. She talked about her father, about the pain she had carried for years. Lucas listened. He didn't try to fix things or offer excuses. He just listened, and in that silence, in the understanding that passed between them, Chloe started to heal. For Lucas, the changes in his life were just as significant. He spent his days undoing the damage he had done in his business dealings. He didn't just write checks. He took the time to meet with people, to listen to their stories, to understand the true cost of his ambition. It wasn't easy. The world he had once dominated with his wealth and power had no place for someone who was trying to make amends. But Lucas didn't care. He knew that the only way forward was to face the consequences of his actions and to do everything in his power to repair the lives he had destroyed. And it was through this process of giving back, of making things right, that Chloe saw a side of him she never had before. It wasn't just the Lucas she had married on a whim. It was the man he had become. She saw the vulnerability in him, the real desire to change. She had seen his strength in business, but now she saw his strength in humility. And for the first time, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, there could be a future for them together. One evening, as they sat together at a quiet dinner, Chloe looked at Lucas across the table. There was a softness in her eyes, a warmth that hadn't been there before. For so long, their relationship had been based on manipulation and survival. But now, it was different. It was based on understanding, growth, and, for the first time, love. "You've changed, Lucas," Chloe said, her voice quiet but full of sincerity. "I don't think I realized how much until now. I know it wasn't easy for you, but I see you, really see you, and I'm starting to think that maybe all of this, the pain, the mess, the mistakes, led us to this moment, to this." Lucas met her gaze, his heart full. He had done things in his life that he regretted. But hearing Chloe say those words was more than any material success could ever bring him. He had made mistakes, yes, but he was no longer the same man who had hurt so many to get ahead. "I didn't deserve you when we first met," Lucas said, his voice thick with emotion. "I didn't know what I had, and I couldn't see the person standing in front of me. But now I see you, and I will spend every day showing you that I'm worthy of what you're offering. Of you. Chloe smiled softly, her expression tender. I believe you. Lucas, I think I always have. I just needed to see it for myself. It wasn't a grand declaration or a perfect moment. It was quiet, simple, but it was real, and it was enough for them both. The past had shaped them, but it no longer defined them. They had learned, they had changed, and they were ready to move forward together. Over the next few months, their bond deepened. They took things one day at a time, knowing that there would be challenges ahead, but also knowing they would face them together. Lucas was committed to making amends, not just with Chloe, but with everyone he had wronged. And Chloe, though still cautious, allowed herself to trust him. She no longer saw him as the arrogant man who had destroyed everything in his path. She saw him as someone who was trying to do better, to be better. One day, as they sat together in their living room, Lucas turned to Chloe with a serious look on his face. I want to marry you again, he said, his voice steady but filled with hope. But this time, it won't be for a bet. It won't be because of any challenge. I want to marry you because I love you. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Will you marry me, Chloe? For real this time? Chloe looked at him for a long moment, her heart beating faster. She had been through so much with him, so many twists and turns, so much pain, but also so much healing. And now, as she looked at him, she knew that their journey together was only beginning. They had fought for each other. They had fought for their love. And now, they were ready to take the next step. Yes, Chloe said softly, her voice filled with emotion. Yes, Lucas, I will marry you, for real this time. And with that, their love story came full circle. What had started as a challenge, a bet, became something far deeper, a love that had been tested, but had ultimately triumphed. They had rebuilt their lives, learned from their mistakes, and now, together, they looked forward to a future full of hope, redemption, and love. Lucas knew that the road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would still be challenges, still be scars from the past, but he was ready for them, because now he had something worth fighting for, a love that had been earned, not given, and a woman who had shown him what it truly meant to be a better man. As they stood together on the balcony, looking out at the city below, Lucas held Chloe close. The past was behind them, and the future stretched out before them, full of possibilities. Who would have thought? Chloe whispered, her head resting against his chest. That all of this started with a bet? Lucas smiled, holding her even tighter. Who would have thought, he said, his voice filled with a quiet certainty, that it would turn into the best decision I ever made? And with that, they walked forward, hand in hand, ready to face the world together, no longer bound by the past, but free to create the future they both deserved.